Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Women Who Rock Investigate, where branding just got even better for women. Our media source provides case studies in the areas of health, policy and government, human resources, and more. Our experts are handpicked with credible information to validate the latest in these studies. Join us each Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time after Women Who Rock with Success. Now, let's go to the show.
And good morning and welcome to Women Who Rock with Success Investigates. This is an additional brand from our business platform with women. And so we're here to bring and provide resources on case studies that are going on in our society on today. So we're going to be talking about prison reformation and criminal defense legislation laws, and to bring information to you in regards to those fields, because individuals have so many questions about it, and so we are here to answer those questions. At least we're going to try. So welcome to the show. Good morning, and welcome to the show, the criminal defense attorney, Allan Friedman. Good morning.
Good morning, Diane. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Great. So we're going to start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about you and what inspired you to get into the field of law.
Well, you know what? This is a story I haven't really shared with too many people, and you know, I'll open up with you and I'll share a little insight about my personal experience. When I was 16 years old, I was a victim of police brutality. A police officer viciously attacked me. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and as a result of that experience, it made me think about justice, and I started thinking about it, meditating about it. When I went into college, I started to think I wanted to work in justice, and as I became more focused on going to law school, that's when I decided I wanted to dedicate my life to pursuing justice. That was kind of like a pivotal moment in my life. That experience of being totally powerless at the age of 16 and being beat up by a police officer was a terrifying experience, and it kind of puts me in a position to empathize with some of the experiences that my clients go through, because I've been there myself.
Wow, so this is kind of personal for you in this aspect. Wow, that is very, very interesting. Not often do we get that from attorneys, but wow, that is very, very interesting. Okay. So, what are some of the takeaways that you expect your clients to be able to obtain from your services on your side of the fence? Because sometimes individuals will just say, well, I need an attorney. You know, I just got, I'm a three-timer, or 3 strikes you're outlaw, or, you know, I got DUI and this is the 4th or 5th offense. So when they come to you and by you explaining that this is something that you went through yourself, what are some of the takeaways that you expect your clients to be able to retrieve from your services?
Well, this is the ironic part about our criminal justice system. When somebody comes to a highly experienced criminal defense attorney like myself, who works with investigators, who has a lot of resources and experience and connections, they're going to get a top-notch defense. A lot of times their outcome is going to be very disproportionate to somebody who lacks resources, who perhaps lives in you know, a more socially disadvantaged part of society, who might have to rely on a public defender who lacks the resources to give them the best possible defense. So a lot of times my clients, you know, will wind up with getting their record expunged, a dismissal, a favorable resolution. You know, unfortunately, a lot of people who lack the resources to get a competent attorney to investigate their case, to look into every angle on defense, and to really put the time and energy into their case, get railroaded. You know, they get an offer And there's something called the trial tax. I don't know if you ever heard of that. If you bring your case to trial, and if you say I'm going to take my case to trial, if you don't take the plea bargain they're offering you, you're going to do more time than you're going to do on the plea bargain. So I think my takeaway on the whole system is people who have money, who have resources to hire lawyers, generally get a better outcome than people who can't afford to hire a lawyer, people who have to work with public defenders. And public defenders vary greatly from place to place. Depending upon where you are, some states have great public defender systems. Other states like Louisiana or Mississippi, some places like that, have terrible public defender systems. So that would be my major takeaway from what we offer over here is, generally speaking, we give a very good defense to our clients, and in the state system, at least in the state system, they can expect a favorable outcome. I just want to distinguish something for your listeners is there's a big difference between state prosecution and federal prosecution. Mm-hmm. So in the state system, a lot of times first-time offenders, they're offered diversionary programs and plea bargains that they don't do jail time, whereas in federal cases, they have a prosecution success rate of 98%, and almost every single person serves jail time. It's a very draconian system, and the rate of incarceration in the federal system has gone up 700% since 1980. We're basically a prison state at this point.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Basically, let's backtrack on your profile, because while I was doing some research on that, I said, well, perhaps we may be having a F. Lee Bailey on the call on today, because I read some very interesting facts about you as an attorney. So again, we thank you for sharing your expertise with the audience on today. And I do agree with what you're saying in regards to public defenders. For example, here in the state of Tennessee, there is a very high-profile case where an offender was alleged to be accused of, some content is kind of sensitive for audience, but anyway, he was accused of murdering, I guess we can say that, of a Tennessee warden administrator. And so with that, he's getting a very, very rough around the edges type of deal. It appears that the defense attorneys are not doing enough, simply because of the fact that everybody that's in the courtroom are state employees of the state of Tennessee. So I do agree with you when you say it is better to get you to have someone that is hired, and where you can be able to afford to be able to pay for an attorney for the case, because sometimes when it comes, with the defense attorney, sometimes they will be reluctant to be able to put their best foot forward when it in regards to certain cases, and it differs as to how the case applies as well. Wow, that's something. So with the pros and cons to prison recidivism and reform, this is something that people are making a lot of talk and noise about, but there are very, very, very little changes that we see in society is in regards to it. So we're going to break it down a little bit, and I feel that one of the celebrities, which is Kim Kardashian, her family is full of attorneys, and so she is attending school to be attorney because she feels that there is not enough that is being done in regards to programs. As far as, sometimes it be nonprofit organizations, they're not doing enough, and sometimes it's just due to the fact that other organizations, if you call out to them, they will not reach out to be able to help. So with that being said, share with the audience some pros and cons of prison reform and how legislation is working on to make an effective change for that.
Okay, well, I just want to tell you that in the short time I've been practicing law, 28 years, this nation has a dramatic move towards what I call a state of incarceration. We're basically becoming a prison factory state. Just some statistics to throw out at you. Obviously, we as a nation, which is really bizarre to even say these words, we have the highest rate of incarceration in the world. We have more people locked down than any nation on earth. How is that possible? 21% of our population is in jail. We have 4% of the world's population. Think about those numbers. We have 655 people per 100,000 locked down. That's the highest in the world. But I wanted to point out that the part that's most shocking to me is not the fact that we're just the highest population rate locked down in the world. That's not the most shocking to me. What's most shocking is how this breaks down on financial resource level, who gets incarcerated, and racial level. The rate of incarceration for our Afro-American brothers and sisters is extremely high. As I point out, the general rate of incarceration is 655 per 100,000. For Afro-American men, it's 2,300 per 100,000, which is absolutely insane. I don't believe for a minute that Afro-American individuals have a higher propensity to commit crimes than others. The reason for this disparity in a higher incarceration rate is due to bias in the system as a systemic bias, meaning that through every step of the criminal justice system, from police interaction through the criminal justice process through sentencing, there's a systemic bias that works against them. And another statistic, as I was preparing for this interview, which really shocked me, was this statistic that's absolutely shocking to me, which was Afro-American men, 49% will be arrested by the age of 23 in the United States. That is shameful. That is just shameful. So when we talk about prison reform, yes, Kim Kardashian is making some tremendous strides. There was a particular case of a woman who was accused of federally of some drug offense and given a harsh sentence as a first-time offender, and she interceded on her behalf. It obviously was a very unfair sentence, and these examples obviously do make a big difference in the individual's life. But what we really need systemic prison reform as a whole. Incarcerating a generation of youths is not the answer, right? First of all, a prison is basically a college of crime. So when you put somebody in a prison, you're not helping them. You're training them to become a criminal. We need to take these youths and we need to train them to do the jobs of the future. And it's interesting in the politics. I've been watching all the debates and the campaigns. It seems there's a lot of issues that are being debated, but prison reform is not getting a lot of play in the media or in the debate stage. It's not a priority, but it's a huge problem in our society that needs to be addressed. We need to really invest in helping the situation. I look at it like this: if we had a society with people who are dying of hypertension and diabetes from a lifetime of eating terrible food at McDonald's, right? The answer is not to open up hospitals, right, to treat these people for coronary diseases and diabetes. The answer is to go into the inner city and train and educate the people to eat healthy instead of giving them bad food, right? And in this situation, I think that instead of incarcerating people that costs approximately $40,000 per year per person, it'd be a lot more effective to educate people and give them an opportunity to get a great job and a good future. Just my take on prison reform. I think that locking people up and having a prison state is shocking, and the fact that we've advanced so much in becoming a prison state over the last 20 years is very frightening to me.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. Those are some alarming numbers as to what you had shared with the audience as to to the population that is being incarcerated. And I do agree because, you have, there are several groups that are placed on social media that has like up to 14,000 members in them. The individuals are looking for answers, but once they cry out to the prison reform organizations, they are being rejected. They are being turned away and declined because I'm not for sure what is their reasons or synopsis that they're basing their declining on with these offenders' families. So, and I don't think that it's just enough being stated. So with that being said, do you see a lot of lobbying in regards to government, where sometimes individuals, they'll just take it to the streets. They'll go to the state capitol. They'll go to the mayor's office, and they will protest. Do you see a lot of lobbying that is going on in regards to prison reform and to reduce the efforts of prison reform?
Well, I have to say this. Unfortunately, the private prison industry is a tremendous powerhouse, right? They have the most powerful lobbyists. They're an industry that makes billions of dollars in our society, and also you have to realize that the federal government and the prosecutors and the whole system as a whole are profiting off of this prison state. So what we have is a tremendous profit motivation to continue the system. Plus we have constituents who are concerned about crime. The average person who's living in their home might be concerned about crime, or politicians who are soft on crime. So the people who are concerned about changing the system may be disenfranchised and have lack of voice. They need to organize. But I will say this, optimistically, we recently had some reforms in New York State about bail reform. I don't know if you heard about that, but they did have some tremendous bail reform changes where they eliminated bail in many categories, which was a tremendous step forward because bail is extremely unfair. Bail is the whole system, bail bond while a case is pending. If you're rich and you have money, then the judge posts a bond on you, then you're just going to post the bond and you're going to be released. But if you're a poor person, you're going to be sitting in jail. So New York State came out with a proposal, and a lot of people are outraged about it, and they basically eliminated bond totally in most cases except for very violent offenses. So people are just being released for misdemeanors. A lot of people are upset, but the reality is it's fair, it's equitable, because people who don't have financial means don't have the money to post a bond. So what distinguishes you from whether you're going to be sitting in jail while your case is pending or whether you're going to be at liberty is how much money you have in the bank. So it's really a fair proposal. What they have in New York is the bail reform. What's complicated about it in New York is that there's been a few bad apples that have gone out and committed multiple offenses over and over. I'm sure they're going to fine-tune that bail reform to address multiple offenders who go out and commit multiple offenses while they're out on bail. For most people, if they're charged with a simple crime, the problem in the past was if someone committed a simple offense like shoplifting or DUI, and they had a small bond of $300 or $400, they just couldn't raise it, then they'd be sitting in jail for months or years while their case was pending, just because they don't have the money. So I see there is a potential for prison reform legislation. I just think that the constituency to advocate for it is so fragmented. It's very difficult to get organized together in unity. That's my question. Can we get together as one voice, as one group, and advocate for prison reform together? That's the question, because there's so many people who are being harmed. There's so many people who are suffering.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Which brings me to the next question, because different states carry different laws, and so in regards to the change of laws, there are some attorneys. We're not going to say they're criminal defense attorneys or prosecutors or they're senators or what have you, but they submit laws for change and what have you. So the first scenario that I would like to use is that here in the state of Tennessee, there is an individual that he abused the TennCare fraud, which is an insurance supplement for families that are on low income. And so, and he is Caucasian. He is not African American, but he is low income. So he was just trying to provide for his children. I'm not for sure if he was working. It did not detail that. But however, the individual, he only frauded the government out of, I think it was maybe like $12,000 over a 18-month period of time for 2 girls, and I think it was himself as well. He is looking at 29 years for frauding the government. Is like a Medicare type of thing, which they gave out at first to individuals years ago, but now they have something else where they call it TennCare. So the next question would be, why do you feel that the laws are being created so, and I know that money is part of it too, some institutions or some governments have created like a money bank, have made institutions, out of a money bank. But I would think that would be a little bit extreme. I know everybody has to pay for their offenses or what have you, or have to give an account for their offenses. I would think that would be very, very extreme to take this father from his 2 little girls for a such of amount as that, which I know $12,000 is not pennies, but for 29 years, that's a long time. So I wanted you to see if you would be able to share your take on that, because even though it is Tennessee, but of course the podcast is international reach that we get, so it can be able to help others in other states. I know all rules apply in different states, but still, at least something that you could be able to give to the audience. It could be able to help them in that area, not for what they're doing, but to be able to help other family members. I don't know. I'm not for sure. I just think that's just too extensive.
Well. Speaking to his situation, we have a similar statute here in Connecticut. If you commit a larceny or fraud against the government, they charge it as a much higher offense in Connecticut, regardless of the amount. Our ordinary larceny in first degree is over $20,000, but here in Connecticut, any crime where you're stealing from a municipality or a state government is a larceny in the first degree. But generally speaking, you can resolve these cases through some type of plea bargain. However, what happens in these situations, especially if it gets a lot of publicity, is the government will want to make an example of somebody to deter other people. and what makes it really unpleasant is the fact that it's like this. It's thousands of people are doing the same thing, and one person gets caught, and there's no rhyme or reason about why this particular person gets caught, and then it's just some guy trying to support his family, and he has to do 29 years in jail, and everybody else gets away with it, but this one guy has to do 29 years in jail, and you have to ask yourself, where's the fairness in this? There is no fairness in it. It doesn't make any sense. It's just not right. Hopefully, we'll just have to pray that he finds good counsel, and the counsel can help him to get a fair resolution of his case in his particular situation. but it seems that what's being offered to him is not fair under all the circumstances of his case. I think the criminal justice system should look at people who are raising children and trying to do the best they can, and take that into account, and take into account the past criminal history of the person, and offer alternative resolutions. That's part of the reason why we're a prison state. Think about the cost to the taxpayers of Tennessee for locking this individual up for 29 years. It's ridiculous. It's not going to help anybody. I totally disagree with that.
Absolutely. I also disagree with it. I mean, I think, income does perhaps maybe change the status of individuals that are, and to determine, I guess where their status is going to be. And sometimes it does not, because even though this topic here does not have anything to do with the subject that we're talking about today, but even with the case with Harvey Weinstein, and it's not funny, but still with the case with him in regards to that, he had money, he had power, and he still has it, but he was not, I guess the government was trying to send him a message as well that he was not above the law in regards to, I guess, his economic status, and it's nothing against him or what have you, because I'm not going to be biased about it, but I just wanted to, make that. I'm not for sure as to how government policies weigh out one over the other one. I don't know. He's a disgraced movie mogul. I guess that's what they were calling him and what have you and things. But it's just kind of shame, and that's what I guess we're going to have to do. We're going to have to pray for the gentleman. I think it's another case that's pending on the same type of charge in regards to another family member that has done the same thing with the TennCare fraud against the government. So, we're just going to have to be doing something, keep speaking out like we're doing on the podcast to be able to bring more advocacy and change to that. So the next question that I have for you, and this is in regards, and this, like I said, we're not here to be biased, because I love me some Donald Trump. Everybody have their own different opinions about different politics, attorneys, et cetera, and what have you, and everybody has their negative feedback about certain things. But with the commuting that he's doing, of course, it's an outrage about it. And the people, especially with the Attorney General, William Barr, he's kind of offended. I've put these guys up. I've put them up under the jail and what have you. And so now President Trump is coming back, and he's commuting all of their sentences and what have you. And so people are outraged in regards about that. So just it's not something that I guess I want you to be able to share as to what you feel about it, but I do want you to share with the audience in regards to how that would be able to change, because I know that he did accept several proposals from Kim Kardashian and what have you, but I think it's kind of like a fair handshake, if I can say that statement. What do you think?
Well, I think it's great that President Trump is... I think you're talking about President Trump's recent pardoning of certain individuals. I think it's great that he's looking at the cases of people and examining their situation, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. He is the chief law enforcement officer, and he certainly has that power. My comment, and I think it's wonderful, some of those cases... it's fantastic, but my take on it is the most recent round of pardons was focused on a particular group of individuals, and I think that the presidential pardon is so important, and I think there's a lot of other people who could really use some relief from these draconian sentences they're serving. There's a lot of people who were wrongfully convicted, and a lot of people who have received sentences under the former draconian sentencing laws that disproportionately affected people in the inner city who were dealing with crack cocaine, who received 3-strike sentences for life for possession of small amounts of crack cocaine, for example. I'd like to see some of those people get their sentences pardoned, because I think those sentences are absolutely outrageous, and I think it's great that he's pardoning people. I'd like to see him broaden his scope beyond these political figures who, by the way, one thing I thought about this, looking at those individuals, almost all of them, as a matter of fact, I think all of these people were people with vast financial resources who received the best possible legal defense, who disputed their allegations at a trial, were found guilty after a full and complete trial, who had every one of their constitutional rights protected, and yet they, being convicted of their crime, are receiving a presidential pardon. I'd like to see the presidential pardons going to people who perhaps lack the resources for adequate defense, who never had an opportunity to have their case being heard in court, or railroaded and pressured and probably coerced through police interrogation tactics into confessing to a crime they didn't commit, or taking a plea bargain in a case which they shouldn't have, and regretting it and being in prison for something they didn't do, and they're innocent. I would like to see him using that power to help some of those folks. That's what I think about it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with what he did, but I'd like to see it expanded to help out some other folks who could really use it.
Well, yeah, I absolutely agree. There have been some individuals that we have reached out to some families, and they have did some extensive research in regards to trying to connect with Kim Kardashian, and so one of them had shared with me last week. They was like, "Well, Miss Winbush, Van Jones, who is the commentator." Well, he's like a news anchor or something like that on CNN. So they were stating that they were going all the way to the top to get his attention so they can connect with Kim Kardashian, so they can be able to submit their loved ones' cases to her to see if they can, get the president to pardon their loved one as well. I just think that the people are going to have to, I mean, there are a lot of groups on social platforms that individuals can be able to voice their opinion, but that's not going to be loud enough. It's going to have to have some other source of methods that is going to have to be used in order for for them to be even to get to her, and then for her, Kim Kardashian herself, to be able to read the entire case and see if it's worth commuting. So, because people are doing a lot they're doing everything that they can to try to get equality. I guess that's what I'm trying to say in regards to that. But, I applaud him. I do. And all of them, they are politics and what have you. But as you stated, it needs to be something done for the man that's on the lower platform as well. So if you would, we're going into another segment, which is segment 3. If you would share with the audience the definition of First Step Act, and the reason why I say to define that, because a lot of individuals, I have worked in a federal institution myself, along with the United States Marshal Service. And a lot of individuals, they're not told anything. The attorneys do not share with them certain things, especially if it's a public defender. Some individuals don't even know their rights. I have been in the courtroom, even with 2019, where the judge would sit there and be using inappropriate terminology to the witness that's on the stand, telling them that, quote unquote, if you plead the Fifth Amendment, that means that you're guilty and what have you. And so that's the reason why when we bring guests on the show, we try to make sure that the audience is very well equipped as to what the terms are in whatever topic that we're discussing. So if you would share with us what the First Step Act is.
Okay. Well, I just want to reiterate again the statistic I gave earlier in the show, just so people can wrap their brains around this, about our federal prison population since 1980. It's rose 700%. I believe this is like a crisis. It's ridiculous. We're going to have to keep building more and more prisons to keep these people under lockdown. I mean, it's a prison state. We're building the federal system. It's a broken system. So this act, legislation, they say, is like making sausage. That's what the legislatures do when you hear them talk about it. It's a compromise between competing groups, the Democrats and the Republicans. They can never really see eye to eye, and you have conflicting opinions. I mean, it's great that they came together to do something. This First Step Act includes so many different things. There's a lot of different factors here, but the principal takeaways, it's a really huge act that includes a lot of stuff. It does a lot of things, but some of the things that it does is it eases mandatory minimum sentences for drug offenders. That was a huge problem. It eases the 3-strike rule for drug offenders. It used to be a life sentence. Now it's a 25-year. It applies the Fair Sentencing Act that addressed the disparity between individuals that are holding crack cocaine versus powder cocaine. Your listeners may or may not be aware that under the federal sentencing guidelines, individuals who had crack cocaine were facing much more severe sentences than people who had powder cocaine. And, unfortunately, in our inner cities, our more impoverished constituents and members of society were more likely to use crack cocaine, and as a result, they're the ones who are facing these much more stiff sentences. So this is a sentence that's handed out in a very discriminatory manner. So this act addresses that disparity. It expands compassionate release program, which is, I think, that's the part of the act that's the most getting the most publicity. The people who are getting the compassionate release. And it also increases the number of good conduct days from 47 to 54 days per year. But there's a lot of things that go into this. But let me suggest this to you, okay? This is like putting a Band-Aid on a giant wound. The system is broken. The laws are unfair. The sentencing guidelines are ridiculous. The judges should have discretion to give a appropriate sentence. They should have in federal system programs for first-time offenders, diversionary programs for somebody who's their first time they've ever been arrested in their life. They shouldn't be looking at years in jail and house arrests. That's my opinion. I think it should be a totally different outcome for regular folks who are first-time offenders, just like it is in the state system. But unfortunately, the federal system, it's mandatory jail time in a lot of instances. And the other part about it that's so unfair to me is the random nature at which the federal government charges people. Because there's so many people who may be committing a certain offense, like, for instance, cheating on their taxes, for example. So many people might be cheating on their taxes, but so few people are going to get charged with cheating on their taxes, almost to set an example. But those people are going to wind up serving jail time. So, where's the fairness in it? I mean, do we really want to be a prison state? Do we really want the United States of America to be a prison state where so many people are locked down, that we have the highest rate of incarceration, more than China and Russia? I mean, is this what America, is this what we want for our nation, for our children? We have to do something about it. This First Step Act is a first step, but we need to take more steps. So those are some of the highlights of what the First Step Act is. I think President Trump did a great job to bring people together, and it's great that we have this as a first step, but I think we need more steps, and hopefully in the as the election draws near, maybe some of the debate can be focused more towards these issues of prison reform that disproportionately affect people who are not only minorities in our society, who are becoming the majority, by the way, and also people who are financially disadvantaged, because the great equalizer in the criminal justice system is people who lack financial resources often lack access to justice.
Wow. So with that being said, a lot of times there is not enough education, and we've had attorneys on the show ever since November, because we're trying to continue to make our voice to be heard through different attorneys, California and what have you. So what can an offender do, or the family member to do? It's something they should have to work on as well, and so how can they educate themselves? So, for example, if it's the federal system is 15%, if I'm not mistaken, unless it's changed since then. You get 15% free, and then the rest of the 85% you have to serve the whole entire time. What can they do to be able to educate themselves? Where can they go? Where can they retrieve resources, primary, secondary research, information? And a lot of times people are not, concerned about it when they get out, but they should be, because the laws are continually to be not lifted, but I guess mashed down in order to eliminate the guidelines for them to be able to have like a little free path where they can perhaps maybe be free from returning and re-entry in the prison system. Where can they be able to go to be able to get the resources and what have you?
Well, unfortunately, if you're talking about people who are already incarcerated, their access to resources is very limited, and their resources would be through speaking with their fellow inmates. My clients who are incarcerated, they actually are very well informed, because they have a lot of people who are in the system who they actually know a lot. There's some inmates in the system, they call them jailhouse lawyers, that know a lot of information, and they have libraries in the system. So I would hate to be in that situation, but they have ways of making themselves informed and keeping themselves up to date. I would say that for anybody who was in that unfortunate situation of being incarcerated, not only would I work on educating myself about my rights as a prisoner and working with my counselor in the institution, I would also encourage them to educate themselves with whatever programs are available for educational opportunities. If they're involved with substance abuse programs, any training or educational opportunities that are available to them while they're incarcerated, they should avail themselves of to assist them when they get out. Absolutely. We are just about out of time, and of course, what does that mean? That's part one. That is part one with you on today, and of course, we're going to try to return to reschedule another part two with you whenever the time is feasible. But before we go, we want you to be able to share what you want to give to the audience as to what you want to leave with them, and then also this will be an opportunity for you to be able to share any books, resources, tools that you have from your personal library as a criminal defense attorney, as well as how can they be able to connect with you, if they can be able to follow you on any social media platforms and be able to engage with the movement that you have as a criminal defense attorney, and as how they can be able to
hire you as come in as a client and you as their defense attorney. With all of that said, you can share that within the last 2 minutes that we have.
Well, I thank you, Diane. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today. I just want to say the following for anyone who's listening. Number one, you don't have to talk to the police. All right. So many of my clients and people who are in jail today are there because the police use coercive tactics. It's very unfortunate in our society. The police are allowed to lie to you and tell you lies and try to trick you up to get you to talk and make you make a false confession and put you in trouble. You don't have to talk to the police, all right? And lying to the police is a crime. So the best solution if you're in a situation is simply say, you know what, I don't want to talk to you. I want to speak to a lawyer, and get yourself a lawyer. That's the best way you can get yourself if you're ever in that situation. And you don't have to consent to a police search of your home, your office, or your cell phone. Make sure they get a warrant. If they ask, they can take a look in your car or whatever to say, you know what, officer, thank you, but no thank you. I would say a good 60% of the cases that I've dealt with, if people would just follow those 2 guidelines, they wouldn't have a case. Most of the cases, the defendants actually act and assist the police in making the case against them because they fall for the police tricks. So don't fall for the tricks of the police. That's the advice I would give to your listeners. Use your constitutional rights. You have the right to remain silent. Use that right. And I would say if you're interested in prison reform, contact your congressman or your legislator. Let them know you're interested in that subject. Reach out to them. Call their phone number. Send them an email. Let them know that you're upset about the rate of incarceration in our society. As far as my office, if you have a criminal case in Connecticut or if you have a case anywhere you'd like to talk to me about, you can reach me at Allan, Allan F, Friedman, Friedman, law.com or 203-357-5555. I'd be happy to talk to anyone about any criminal matter. And I thank you for your time today. It was very, very enjoyable talking with you.
Thank you so much, Allan, for sharing with our audience on today of tools and resources that they need to be able to educate themselves even the more for the families. And our broadcast is for corporate America and professional women, but we also has a brand extension, which is where we investigate case studies. So thank you so much for taking the opportunity out, and we will be in touch with you to see when we can be able to conclude part 2 in our discussion real soon for perhaps maybe the month of March. So women, for all upcoming events, you can go to our website at www.womenwhorockWithSuccess.com. And so we have some different other events that are coming up on there, as well as we will be coming to Apple TV real soon. So thank you for being our guest again, Allan, and you have a great day.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
On Today. Tune in each Tuesday for more resources and news from our resources. Enjoy your day.